this happens. How many of you remember what I preached on last week? What was it? Remember what it was? Come on, because I didn't write it down. What was it? That's right. This week, it's on commitment. I was praying this week and I was like, Lord, what are you trying to do here? Last week was a toe stepper. This week's going to be a toe stepper. So hang on. A young lady was sunbathing on the beach when a little boy in his swimming trunks, carrying a towel, came up to her and asked, "Do you believe in God?" She was kind of surprised. She said, "Why, yes, I do." Then he asked, "Do you go to church every Sunday?" And again, her answer was, "Yes." He then asked, "Do you read your Bible and pray every day?" Again, she said, "Yes." By now, her curiosity was very much aroused. The little lad sighed with relief and said, "Will you hold my money while I go swimming?" You thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? All right. Good way to start off a cool morning. The preacher was wired for sound with a lapel mic. And unlike today's wireless mics, he had a wire attached to it. I'm sure all of you can remember back in the day, the old Pentecostal preachers drug that big line of wire riding around, and sometimes they get tangled up in that dude. I've even seen them do a little swinging every once in a while. You know, they get happy. But this wire had been attached to it, and he was an energetic preacher. And as he preached, he swings his hands, and he moved briskly about the platform, jerking the mic cord as he went. Then he moved to one side, getting wound up in the cord and nearly tripping before he jerking it again and repeating the process on the other side. After several circles and jerks, a little girl leaned toward her mother and whispered, "If he gets loose, is he going to hurt us?" Oh, nothing like a little corny joke before we get started this morning. A chicken and a pig came upon a church building. Now, this is part of the church service. Come on. A chicken and a pig came upon the building, read the advertisement on the billboard out front, which read, "Help us feed the poor." Immediately, the chicken suggested they help feed the poor with bacon and eggs. The pig thought for a moment and said, "There's one thing wrong with feeding bacon and eggs to the poor. For you, it only requires a contribution, but for me, it requires total commitment." Think about that. So many of us don't want to be totally committed to the Lord because it demands too much. What a way to make it somber in church. Y'all are looking at me going, "Woo. I was doing just fine laughing, and now he cut right to the chase. I killed the moment, didn't I?" Are you committed? The last couple of services, we've had a bunch of people. Shaking hands with you guys is just awesome when church is over with. I don't ever quit that. I enjoy hearing little stories as you're walking out, and of course I like to hear you tell me I did a good job and all that stuff that goes along with it. I like standing beside my beautiful wife, and I hope she likes standing beside me, as burly as I am. But I like to hear what you've got out of the message. I like the text messages that says, "You know what, I was going through this, and that message was right on time." today, are you committed? We've had so many people come up in the last couple of weeks say, hey, we're in 100%. We're ready to start working. Where do you need us and what can we do? And I was not a bad surprise, but I was just about knocked over when I seen Angela's piece of paper. And, of course, she's like my wife. She's ADD when it comes to making all these lists and notes. And, of course, I'm like, what do y'all want to do? Sure. Just if I can find my gun, I'll shoot from the hip. I mean, sometimes I work that way. They're all totally, it's 1, 2, 3. Okay. OCD, KJR, PL, whatever. Whatever it is. Now listen here, don't laugh at her. You're supposed to laugh at me. What are you doing? Laughing at me, not with me. Y'all need to gain your composure here. I'm trying to be serious. But we've had so many people be JKL and want to help. And it's been awesome. And when I seen her piece of paper yesterday, we was getting ready for that ride, and I looked at that dude, and there's like 10 people on each list. And then I get to the end of it where it says, clean up. No, it was as full as it was at the first. I'm going, wow, God's working. He's working. Because I can remember when we started, and there's been times in between where we got 5 or 6 people, and they're just flat wore out with their tongue hanging out. And everybody said, we love the church, but we got to go. Our yard needs mowed. And I'm like, have 2 acres. I believe I could bale today. Probably get 100 bales. But we got people running out our ears for next week. It's awesome. I want to commend you guys because that's how and that's why God's waiting on us. He's waiting on us to step up in the area of service because you're going to hear this a lot this year, I want Crosspointe to be known as a service church. I don't want to be known as a biker club. I don't want to be known as a men's church. I've heard all kinds of stuff. I want to be known as a service church. I want to be known that we care about people. We want to go out and help people. We want to bring them to the knowledge of Jesus. That's what I want. I don't want to be known as a mega church. It'd be okay if God wants to send 300-400 people. And it's okay. I'm fixing to get in trouble for this, but Tracy, plug your ears. I want everybody to get with my wife and walk around the building over there right off 30th Street. She's going, I want Kmart. I said, I want herb. We can have a stepping stone before we jump into the hundreds of thousands of square footage. But I want to see our women walking around the building. I want to see our men. Maybe some in this church, God's saying, okay, it's your turn to grab a bunch of guys and walk around the building. We got to see our finances go up. Yeah, it takes money. God's working. He's moving. But it takes that great big word called commitment. Everybody in here, if you ask them, would say, I love Crosspointe. What have you got invested? What have you got invested? There's a few of you probably say, well, until Crosspointe come along, I had a lot of extra time. Don't talk to Chris, because if you talk to him very long, you're going to put yourself on the shelf, and it's going to become all about Crosspointe. Well, that's not a bad thing. It's not. It's not a bad thing. But we got to be committed in every area of our life. Because once we get to that 100% commitment each person has, then God's going to say, okay, go to the next level. But until we get that commitment level, until we get to the place where we let everything go, our time, our talents, and our finances, until we let go of it, we're going to be right here. So this whole month of May, I want you guys to do me a favor. I want you to commit to spending at least 10 minutes a day praying for Crosspointe. 10 minutes a day praying for our people, our pastor, our finances, and the people that God's going to bring this year to this building. Because there's areas in our life, in our church, that need to be scotched. In our kids' ministry. All the way around. God needs to move us to the next level. And it takes commitment. Webster's dictionary says to commit oneself says one is to speak or act in such a manner as to bind oneself to a certain line of conduct. Commitment to Jesus is more than a definition. It requires my life, my soul, and my all. But some of you, don't hate the preacher, some of you find yourself hanging between being committed and being uncommitted. Kind of maybe having one foot in and one foot out. Commitment to Jesus is more than a definition. So I got a question for you this morning. I bet you can't ask. I bet you don't even know what I'm fixing to ask. Are you uncommitted? Are you uncommitted for the cause of Christ? Or have you got in 100%? Let's look at Matthew 19, 16 through 22. Matthew 19, 16 through 22. Oh, and by the way, Keith wanted me to tell you that we're using the NLT. All right? I switched it up a little bit, and he said, you might tell them where we're at. So I'm telling you where we're at. NLT. There we go. I got a thumbs up, so that means I'm doing good. Someone came to Jesus with a question. Teacher, what good deed must I do to have eternal life? Why ask me about what is good? Jesus replied. There is only one who is good, but to answer your question, if you want to receive eternal life, keep the commandments. Now, this next thing is probably what most of us say. You think in your mind, when it says keep the commandments, you're thinking, well, which ones? Glad you asked. It says, Jesus replied, you must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely. Honor your father and mother. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. He says, I've obeyed all of these commandments. The young man replied. What else must I do? Jesus told him, if you want to be perfect, go and sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Now, let me stop right there. How many of you today would sell everything you own and go follow him? I'm glad nobody raised their hand. Because we're human. You know what that tells us? What's that tells us? Because there ain't one of you is ready to go, woohoo, I'm in. There goes the Harley. Ooh. I'm all in. There goes the house. There goes my favorite guitar. Thought I'd throw that in there, Kyle. Come on. It says, if you want to be perfect, go and sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven. Then come follow me. But when the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had many possessions. We're selfish. I was sitting up there last night. One of the ladies that rides with the CMA was a nurse. She worked at the hospital, but she wasn't on duty. So she spent a lot of the time up in the room with them, listening to the doctors saying, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is what's happening. And she would come back and say, she'd come back and she said, they'll give us 2 rooms for the family to stay up here tonight and tomorrow night. But it's $180 a room. And that was at the hospital. And I watched something that flat made me happy inside. Now, they're just a forming chapter. They haven't chartered yet. They're not a true CMA chapter till the end of the year. They're still trying to get all their stuff in a row, all their officers and all that. This one boy pulled off his hat, and it went all the way around the room. When I give it back to him, one of them started counting money. I heard another one say, how are we? He goes, we're way over good. Now, this is just 10 or 12 people. Ordinary people just like me and you. But the bond and the brotherhood. They had another brother and sister hurt. They wanted to help. I heard one of them say, how are they going to eat the rest of the week? One of them said, hey, you let us know tomorrow, we'll handle that too. Brotherhood. Their possessions didn't mean nothing. I couldn't help but watch. It made my heart happy. See, they was ready to give everything. Hey, they was going to give it all. Are we uncommitted? Are we uncommitted? The easiest thing to give in our life is our time. And how many of us say, well, I got things to do today. I got to be to bed at 10 o'clock. I got things to go do. My kids has got ball. I don't have time. Are you committed? Not saying there isn't things important in life and you don't have to prioritize your time, but I was listening to somebody this week and they said, you know what, as a people, we make ourselves busy because we don't know what to do when it's time to stop and listen to what God's telling us to do. When I was growing up, I lived 10 miles outside of town. You know how many times we went to town? Every morning when we went to school. What happened if we forgot something when we went to the grocery store? You did without until you went back into town the next day. What do we do here? We run 10 miles 50 times a day and don't think nothing of it. That's just part of the cost of life. Where's the olden days? I'd like to live back in the buggy and horse day. Can you see me doing that? The buggy and horse day, you know. I mean, I wouldn't mind living on a little house on the prairie. I really wouldn't. Some of you are saying that boy right there's lost his mind. Self-centeredness. I'll try to hurry. Self-centeredness is the tattoo of our society today. Each one of us are self-centered. The only thing that people seem to care about is their own desires, their own wishes, their own satisfaction. Who cares what the cost or the consequence? Most marriages dissolve because of self-centered attitude of the married couple. Neither is willing to give themselves completely to the other. But both wants to live in their own lives as a single, but still be married. Marriage still requires surrendering our own desires and our wants to the will of God and to make the relationship work at all cost. Our kids are disrespectful of parents or any form of authority because they have been told that whatever they want, they can have, and no one has the right to stop them, or heaven forbid, if we punish them. All these things I have kept, the young man said. It's not about keeping a bunch of do's and don'ts. It's about keeping the laws of grace and mercy and obeying the commandments to live a holy life. We get so caught up in judging others that we forget about the sin in our own lives. Those that are uncommitted focus on riches of the here and now rather than the riches of heaven. How many know it's hard to think about heaven being the ultimate goal? We're all human. Some of you are sitting here today going, man, I tell you what, let's see, 3 o'clock, I got this to do, and I need to be eating Mexican at 1 o'clock, and let's see, Dunn's opens at 12. How many of you? I got to get home and mow the yard and kick the dog and wash the clothes and feed the cat. I got to go get rested up for tomorrow because I got to go to work. Go and sell and follow me. Those are treasure and heart issues. The Bible tells us that where our treasure is, that's where our heart will be also. How many of you heard me 6 months ago say you could probably tell where I've been the last month looking in my checkbook? Some of you going, wait a minute here. I could tell exactly where your heart is and what you hold dear to your heart by looking at your checkbook. Some of you's going, no, you can't. Oh, yes, I can. I can tell that some of you like to eat an awful lot through the week. I can tell that some of you don't cook no food at home unless the power's out at Arby's. I could tell a lot of you run your car wheels plumb off because you spend an awful lot of time at the Shell station. Or I could tell that an awful lot of you spend a lot of time at home because there's no check ruts. There's a few of you in here, I could probably say, you spend a lot of time at HD because there's a lot of checks going to the motorcycle fund. You can tell a lot about a person by looking in their checking account. You can tell where their heart is. You can tell what is most important. Go and sell and follow me. In the world, we're caught up in materialism, self-gratification. It's no wonder some people don't have a heart after God. It's been my experience that it does not matter whether you're rich or poor, whether you have a lot of money or little of this world's goods, you can still be materialistic. Y'all are going to laugh about this one. If you get more upset over your car getting scratched, or your new carpet getting stained, or your new clothes being ruined more than you do over the sin in your life, you're materialistic. I didn't even get a laugh out of that. That hit us all right on the toes. If we set our hearts on the things of God and lay up our treasures in heaven, those little situations won't be nearly as touchy. Those that are uncommitted focus on keeping rather than giving. It says in Mark 8:36, and what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? What good will houses and lands and possessions do if your life's over? This is a good one. Have you ever seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul? That was a good one. Have you ever seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul? No. I've heard of there was a guy that passed away in Connersville that, I don't know if he had a moving business or what, but they took his body to the cemetery in a U-Haul. That was kind of different. The only things that will follow you are your soul, are the souls that you have won to Jesus, and the good works that you did for the Lord with the right heart. Everything else will be burned away. How many of you know that Jesus doesn't need people to come in this building and worship him on Sunday morning and be madder and far? That's with an A, not an I. If you don't come in here ready to worship the Lord, you might as well stay home. If you come to serve for the Lord and you got a bad attitude and everything ain't working and the utensils are misplaced or the food ain't cooked right or the people weren't talking to me nicely, what are you going to do? You run people off. How about you and I? Are we a part of the uncommitted ways? Focusing on self rather than God? This man who came to Jesus was looking for a better method of getting what he wanted rather than wanting God to make him a better man. We look at God for greater ways and means to accomplish our goals. But God is looking for us to surrender our lives and give our souls to accomplish his goals. Jeremiah 7:3-8. This is what the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of Israel, says. Even now, if you quit your evil ways, I will let you stay in your own land. But don't be fooled by those who promise your safety. Simply because the Lord's temple is here. They chant, the Lord's temple is here. The Lord's temple is here. But I will be merciful only if you stop your evil thoughts and deeds and start treating each other with justice. Only if you stop exploiting foreigners, orphans, and widows. Only if you stop murdering. And only if you stop harming yourselves by worshiping idols. Then I will let you stay in this land, and I will give to you your ancestors to keep forever. Don't be fooled into thinking that you will never suffer because the temple is here. It's a lie. He was always calling and challenging the uncommitted to commit. 2 Timothy 2 says, verse 11 says, this is a trustworthy saying. If we die with him, we will also live with him. If we endure hardships, we will reign with him. If we deny him, he will deny us. Wait a minute, let me back up there. Did y'all hear that part? If we deny him, he will deny us. If we are unfaithful, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny who he is. Are you committed? Look at Matthew 10:34. Y'all are saying, man, he's wearing the Bible out. Well, that's what we're here for. Don't imagine that I came to bring peace to earth. I came to bring peace. I came not to bring peace, but a sword. I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Your enemies will be right in your own household. If you love your father and mother more than you love me, you are not worthy to be mine. Or if you love your son or daughter more than me, you are not worthy of being mine. If you refuse to take up your cross and follow me, you are not worthy of being mine. If you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it. Those who are committed focus on inner peace rather than temporal peace of man. In Philippians 4:7 it says, then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. This peace that no amount of troubles can take away. How many of you has been troubled today or this week? You've been tested. I mean, something's happened and you went, where's that peace that passes all understanding? How committed? How committed are you? When things get tough, the first thing we do is, well, God's turned his back on me. This peace that no amount of troubles can take away. Some of you hear this last week, the troubles took away your peace. This is a peace that will be with you in the middle of every storm. I don't know how people who don't know the Lord can survive in the world. It's no wonder that so many are looking for peace. Maybe through drugs. Or maybe they end up in a mental institution. Without Jesus, there's no real peace. You've seen the patch that says N-O, God, no peace. But if you K-N-O, God, you K-N-O, peace. There's those who are committed to focus on relationships with Christ than with family and friends. I'm not saying that family and friends aren't important, because they are. They got to be a high priority in our life. But nothing must come above your relationship with Jesus. Those of us who are committed focus on love worth finding rather than selfish love of man. What is real love anyway? What is real love? Most people confuse lust with love. Some of you went, that kind of shocked me. Most people confuse lust with love, or physical attraction with love, or feeling that this is right with love, or none of those things having anything to do with love. They only have to do with two people with uncontrollable lust. Love is found when we still care about someone after we've seen them at their worst. If your husband or wife did something that made you mad or showed their rear end, did you still love them? I'm perfect. My wife, it's real easy for her. I don't ever do that. I'm glad she's not mic'd this morning. When the dirty clothes are stacked to the ceiling, the dirty dishes beg for your attention, the sick babies are crying in your ears and pulling on your leg, and the creditors are ringing your phone every 20 minutes. We haven't even had time to brush our teeth or comb our hair, and if you can still look at one another after all that and feel that you are in love, then you can say, we truly have love for one another. Love is also giving without expecting anything in return. Love is doing all you can do for someone else when you are feeling totally exhausted and can't seem to take another step. Love will get up and go another mile, even a mile, if asked to do so. Those who are committed focus on discovering the source of life rather than being the source. How many of us today try to focus on being first when we should be focused on being last? How many of you today get upset because maybe something didn't go right in your life when you should be saying, you know what? Let's let this one go next. I think the definition of a true leader is one who can lead from behind. A true leader will lead from behind. He doesn't have to be first. Proverbs 16:3 says, commit your actions to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. We are to be committed to God, first of all. Matthew 22, verse 37 says, Jesus replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. We have to love. Those who are committed to God will not have any trouble meeting any of their other commitments. The pure love of God and our pure love for Him will keep us on the right path. Secondly, we should be committed to the church. Hebrews 10:24 says, let us think of ways to motivate one another to act of love and good works, and let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do. But this is the best part. Encourage one another, especially now that the day of His return is drawing near. God's fixing to come. You can read the newspaper. You can watch the news. When they're trying to kick all the, what do they call them in the Army? They're not pastors, they're chaplains. when they're trying to kick the chaplains out of the military, something's wrong. When you can't talk to your best friend in the Army and you're both in the Army about Jesus, or they call it proselytizing, they're going to court-martial you. Something's wrong. I hope that's Jesus calling. When we can't stand up in the United States and talk about Jesus, they're taking our rights away. We got to stand up. We got to stand up for Jesus. What if I turned out all the lights and I told every one of you to sit in the floor and we put black stuff on the door? I said, don't make a sound, because if they hear us, they're not going to let us worship the Lord. How would you feel? Right now, we got the right to come in this church house and we can worship the Lord as loud as we want to. We can make as much noise as we want to. But it's coming a day that they're going to try to take that right away. It's coming a day that they're going to say, we don't need preachers. Why do we need somebody talking about the Bible? If you want to learn about it, read it. We got to stand up. We got to be committed. Are you committed? How can we say that we love the Lord yet fail to attend church? Where God can speak to us and through us. No man's an island. We need each other to grow so we can have strength for battle. When I was at that hospital, you know what I seen? I seen a bunch of people rally around their peeps when somebody got hurt. You know what happens in here when somebody gets hurt? We rally around. I didn't even have to make no phone calls yesterday. I made one and couldn't get a hold of them, but I didn't have to make no phone calls yesterday. As soon as somebody started hearing, hey, he's going to the hospital, there wasn't no, can we go? There wasn't no, they didn't even ask. It's like, where are you going right now? Because we're following. Because they knew we had a mission to go do. Did those people need us up there? Absolutely. Was we a part of the CMA? No. But they were fellow Christians. They were fellow brothers. Even if they wasn't fellow Christians, what's our duty? To go up there. Say, hey, man, even if you don't agree with me, if you need me, I'm here. How long would you be married if there was no commitment, no togetherness? Would you be married very long? If you had that piece of paper hung on the wall and you never told your wife you loved her, never went out and eat with her, that's my most favorite time, take my wife out to eat. Usually we got people with us, but I enjoy taking her out. Not because I like to eat, because food's an enemy to me. But I enjoy making my wife happy. How many of you like to make God happy? I know even if you aren't raising your hand, you like to make him happy. What do you think he does this morning when he's seen all of you come in this door? He got happy. Happy, happy, happy. I want the band to come up. There's more stuff I got wrote down. I think y'all got the gesture of being committed. I want everybody to close their eyes.